What did one successful high-stakes player know about Isaiah Pacheco before anyone else did? Why do you need to invest in rookies in 2023 best ball teams? And what disappointing team in 2022 could be of value in drafts in 2023? Plus, FFPC co-founder Alex Kaganowski joins us to talk about the FFPC's decision on the Bills and Bengals game from Monday Night Football. Plus, longtime FFPC player, longtime high-stakes champion, 2022 Pros versus Joes champion, and co-host of the GOAT District podcast, Dan Williamson, is going to stop on by to talk about 2023 best ball leagues and much more. We've got a great show for you. Farrell Elliott is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts now.
Stand the pressure. I've seen greater men than me, the lesser.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now watching the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott.
Solace in the scripture. Are we not all our father's sons? I became a man, nobody ever told me what a man was.
Thank you, Rob. Greetings and salutations to all of the Balkaholics and Farelliacs. Welcome to the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com. I am, of course, your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman. My co-host will be here shortly. He is the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Farrell Elliott. Coming up on tonight's show, we're going to be joined by FFPC co-founder Alex Kaganowski and longtime FFPC player, 2022 Pros versus Joes champion, as well as a numerous winner of a ton of other FFPC high-stakes leagues over the years, and co-host of the GOAT District podcast. Dan Williamson will join us to talk about Zamir White's audition, I guess you could say, tomorrow against the Chiefs for 2023, how he's going to handle them in best ball drafts, and some advice for people who are planning on drafting early best ball teams coming up in January, February, and March here before free agency and before the NFL draft, and much more. If you want to connect with us on Twitter, you can do so at HSFF Hour. I am at Eric Balkman. Always check out Farrell's Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship at KFFSC.com as well as KFFSC Official. You can follow Dan on Twitter at Overhyped Sleeper. Sleeper, the final E in Sleeper is non-existent, so that's the way to find him there. Echo District is the podcast handle on Twitter as well. You can also email the show at highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com. If you do have any questions for us, send them in now. We'll try to get to all the chat room questions, all the tweets and emails in our fantasy feedback segment later on in the show. Thanks to our audio engineer, my best friend Bryce, and our producer and mutual friend Rob. I want to remind everybody, if you have not joined it yet, it is the final weekly challenge of the year for the FFPC. Join the weekly challenge, the Week 18 weekly challenge right now. There's no draft involved. There is no salary cap involved. If you want to play without kickers and defenses, or if you want to play with kickers and defenses, you can pick either format to do so. One player per team. Get them in before Sunday's kickoff. You can play in a 100-team format, a 30-team format, or a 10-team format. And if you are playing in the 10-team format, all you have to do is beat those other 9 players, and you will win your free entry into the 2023 FFPC main event, where you can compete for a $1 million grand prize. But wait, there's more. That's right. We are running out of time. 8 days left to join both the world-famous FFPC Playoff Challenge to win a $500,000 grand prize there, or if you want to join for just $35 in the Football Guys Playoff Challenge, 8 days left to sign up there. You can still win $100,000 there as well. In case you missed it last night, we did a special Thursday night edition of the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown with Week 16 FFPC main event 7th place team owner Matt Berman. We came in and chopped it up. We talked a little bit about what he got right and got wrong in 2022, but I think the biggest thing is what he thinks are going to be the main storylines for drafting high-stakes fantasy football teams in 2023. You can check that out, rotoviz.com/podcast, or the FFPC YouTube channel, which you're watching right now, youtube.com/FFPC Fantasy. Speaking of the YouTube fantasy football, FFPC Fantasy Football channel, like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the videos, share the videos with your buddies, or your enemies, just whoever that you want to pass this along to, and then get notified by clicking on that little bell there to make sure that you're never going to miss any time we go live with the HSFF Hour, with the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown, with the FFPC Weekly Preview, with the FFPC Live Best Ball coverage, live main event coverage, live Football Guys Draft coverage. That is all going to be popping off once again this summer with myself, Dave Terpoli, and Aiden LaCorey. Great. We've never had as good a content as we did last year as far as the video and audio goes for the program. And I think a lot of you enjoyed it. The feedback was great. So thank you so much for watching in 2022. And we're on to bigger and better things in 2023. Speaking of bigger and better things, enough of me blabbing. Let's bring in tonight's first guest. He is the co-founder of the Fantasy Football Players Championship. Been on this show many times. He's here to talk about the Monday Night Football decision that the FFPC made about that canceled Bills-Bengals game. You follow him on Twitter at Alex_FFPC. Please welcome back to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, Mr. Alex Kaganowski. Alex, happy Friday night to you, man. Thanks for hopping aboard.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. I feel so much more relaxed today.
Well, you did. Yeah, I mean, so you were on the High Stakes Fantasy Football show on the Better Sports Network last night, talking about a lot of the stuff we'll talk about tonight. We'll touch on some other stuff as well. But you're in the middle of an airport, so it's difficult for you to feel as relaxed as you are right now.
It's crazy. So, yeah, when I did the show yesterday, first of all, I got to the airport 5 minutes before the show started. I got dropped off, and I'm looking for a place to sit. And the only place I couldn't go through the gate. I didn't have enough time to go, not through the gate, through the TSA.
Right.
So I found a couple of literally right at the JetBlue, registration area, counter area, whatever. So there's like people everywhere. It's freaking crazy. This is after a day of, all the craziness going on with, the game finally kind of being finalized, the stats being finalized and not being played in the whole thing.
Right.
So, and after a week of, more of the same. So I'm trying to get on this flight. I'm trying to talk to you. I'm trying to gather my thoughts. And plus, I don't even feel comfortable. I've never been on that show. Like, this is, I've been on this show. I feel it's like, like I'm at home here,
Right. Yeah.
And,
well, you should feel at home here.
Yeah. No, but over there, I didn't want to, I didn't know who was listening. Like, here, I know who's listening. It's mostly kind of FFPC guys and stuff like that. So, I don't know. I feel anyway. I got my Drake now. I'm up in Vermont. I'm at my ski home in Vermont. So now I'm chilling. I can tell the whole fucking story now, man. I'm telling you.
So you didn't miss your flight. That was the biggest thing, right?
No, I didn't mean that. That wasn't the issue. No, that wasn't the issue. It was too much. It was too crazy yesterday. But thanks for having me yesterday and today. I hope I'm going to do a better job today. I'm telling you, I'm going to spill some beans today. You're going to like me today.
Well, I liked you yesterday. It's a high bar to jump over because I thought you did a good job last night. But let's go to it. So I know that the conversation sort of began with Dave the Dizzle Gerzak on Monday night when we saw Damar Hamlin go down, and it got, it was pretty scary, and then it got ultra scary all of a sudden. And then all of a sudden we started having to have a conversation, and that conversation throughout the final decision, lasted, 3 days, and there wasn't a whole lot of break in the conversation until then. Can you tell the viewers a little bit about how, what went in to the whole decision-making process here of ruling that the game, obviously was canceled, and the stats are null and void according to NFL.com. Can you tell us a little bit about the process of the decision-making?
So, first of all, I have to say that, I try to remember a lot of this, and it's crazy because even though it only happened a few days ago, it's just, there's so much to remember. A lot of it is already blurring, I'll be perfectly honest with you, because it was so much stuff to think about. But I will, I try to remember Tuesday because I was in Florida, and that's why I was in the airport yesterday. So I was in Florida taking care of some errands for from my mom, and when all of that's, the day after the game, and obviously the initial announcement, which was that the game will not be played in week 17, right? And this is very important. Week 18 will not be scheduled, will not be changed. So in essence, the NFL said this game is not going to be played in the next 7 days, let's say. That's kind of what the NFL said, that categorically. Like, they basically said it's not being played in week 17 and it's not being played instead of the week 18 games. So what the NFL in essence said, and I kind of had a little bit of a disagreement with Dave about this, and I don't know if you are aware of this, but I told Dave, I said, Dave, 100-1 odds this game is not getting played. Those are my words to Dave. And Dave said, because he had some information later in the week, he said, well, I spoke to somebody who told me this and that, the game's getting played. He goes, I'll take those odds because I think the odds are even money. So I'm like, all right, well, then I'm not giving you 100-1. That's kind of what I told him. So, anyway, so let me go back to Tuesday. So Tuesday, obviously, the news drops, and we get on the call, and we're like, all right, what do we do? What do we do? Should we wait? Should we this? Should we that? I'm like, all right, well, hold on a second, because, 3 years ago, I spent, a few days, editing our terms and conditions with a lot of thought put into what happens when games get canceled, when games get moved, because obviously 3 years ago, there was a lot of thought about that. And, those terms and conditions were edited back then. And I remember, I'm like, wait a minute, we have this stuff in ink, pretty much, black and white. And there's no guessing here. The NFL said they're not playing this game in week 17. We can't count this game. According to our own self-imposed terms and conditions, this is what we put in writing. And, Dave, he's like, well, listen, but what are the options? So anyway, we're going back and forth. I'm certainly not throwing Dave under the bus. I think he was rightfully so in being devil's advocate and playing devil's advocate. And we're going back and forth. And he's like, well, what happens if we wait? Well, I don't know. What does happen? What's the point of waiting if we know exactly what the NFL said? What's going to happen 3 days from now? What's going to happen 4 days from now? And then the conversation started hinging on the stats, and we started we started debating the stats and do we count the stats? Do we not count the stats? I'm like, well, we started going back and forth, and there was a lot of that. And here's where it gets kind of interesting, right? This is the part I didn't tell you yesterday, and you don't really know that much about it. I mean, I gave you a little bit of a hint when we spoke, but I get a phone call. And I want to preface this by saying I'm going to tell the truth here, nothing but the truth. All right, and I'm not throwing anybody under the bus, but I want everyone who has paid attention, everyone who's listening, I want to know what goes on behind the scenes, not just in the FFPC, but in the fantasy industry. Okay. So I'm not throwing anyone under the bus, but I'm going to tell you what happened. So I get a phone call from Scott Atkins. Scott Atkins is an old friend, FFPC player, good guy. I like him. We talk a lot still. And he obviously manages and runs, co-owns another competing, fantasy operator, the fantasy game platform. So he's like, hey, what are we going to do? What's going on? What are you going to do with this? And I'm like, well, listen, I think, for us, it's pretty clear. And, I think we're going to basically say that this game does not count. Like, oh, really? Wow. Well, what are you going to say? You're not going to even wait? What are you going to say? And I'm like, I don't know. I think the sooner the better. I mean, I don't see a point of waiting. So anyway, I'm having this conversation with him, pretty wide open. And he's like, well, let me tell you. He goes, I think he said an email. He goes, I got an email from Greg Ambrosius. Got an email from Greg Ambrosius. So he's like, yeah, he wants to know what we're going to do. He wants to know what everyone's going to do. Because everyone, there's strength in numbers. We need to all be on the same page. We need to know what's going on. I said, well, Scott, I mean, I don't know what he's going to do. I don't know what you're going to do, but I know what I'm going to do. I know what we're going to do because we have our terms and conditions We have, we know exactly what we're going to, how we're going to rule on this. The only thing we don't know what to do with the stats, because the stats were there yesterday. They're still here today. So I can't discount the stats. Anyway, so we're going back and forth. So Scott, we hang up the phone. He calls me back actually a few hours later, again asking me, what are you going to do? Everyone wants to know, Underdog's doing this. FFPC, wants to know what we're doing. I'm like, Scott, we're going to announce this thing tonight. We're going to announce this thing tonight because our terms and conditions are pretty clear. There's no reason for us to wait. And, by waiting, what do we, so let's just talk this through. Let's say if we did wait, right? I didn't say this to him, but I'm telling you this and to our viewers. So if we did wait, right, what would change? The NFL said they're not playing the game in week 17. The NFL said they're not playing the game in week 18. We have the terms and conditions that say you do not count the game if it's not played within that week. What is the reason for us to wait? Answer. The reason to wait was to find out about the stats. Possibly. The only reason to wait is to find out about the stats. But in the meantime, everyone wants to know, what the fuck are you doing? What are you doing? Excuse my language. What are you going to do? So you have to announce something. You can't not announce something when the whole world is crashing down around us, right? The fantasy world, right? So Dave and I went back and forth, and we're like, you know what? We have to make this announcement now because the announcement is not going to change. The game is not going to be played, and we have to make the announcement. And as far as the stats go, we went back and forth, and we settled on the idea that the stats will count as of right now. Why? Because we all saw the game being played yesterday. We all watched the game being played yesterday. We saw the catches. We saw the yards. We saw the touchdowns. And guess what? The NFL did not say that those stats are null and void. They did not say that. They didn't say that. They said the game is what? Suspended. It's hanging. So we said the same thing, that as of right now, the stats are counting. And what do we do? Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like, from the initial email that went out, stats accrued on Monday night will count as they are currently official and have not been deleted by the NFL. So by that, we were, and I think the FFPC has been pretty clear that it follows the official stat feed. It follows the official stats of the NFL. At the time of the announcement, the NFL, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth or the NFL's mouth, but at that point, I don't believe the NFL had ruled either way whether the stats would be counted. However, on their official stat feed, nearly 24 hours later, those stats had not been wiped and they were still on there. And
well, they didn't talk about the stat. I mean, listen, the NFL, look, the NFL is the NFL. They do whatever the hell they want, right? And you can't get anything straight from the NFL, especially in this particular situation. The NFL was playing it as what's the word?
Ambiguous?
As nebulous as they possibly could. I mean, right? So they had the stats on. Then actually, after they made the announcement, they took the stats off. Everyone else had the stats. CBS had the stats. The Score had the stats. ESPN had the stats. NFL.com does not have the stats. Why don't you have the stats? You didn't cancel the game. Can't get an answer, obviously. Cannot get an answer. So the NFL does not cancel the game, but takes the stats off NFL.com. You know what I'm saying? So the whole thing was crazy. But so let me back up. So we make the announcement, and the shit hits the fan. Well, at least, I mean, from the bomb throwers, the shit is hitting the fan. The bomb throwers are throwing the bombs, and, FFPC, bunch of idiots, don't know what they're doing, rushing into it, blah, 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 the whole thing. You saw it, you heard it. Now, what you don't know, what the viewers don't know, is that how many emails and how many texts and how many phone calls and how many DMs we're getting privately who are telling us, hey, guys, this is an impossible situation. We understand. We get it. We're with you. We're going to wait and, sit back. This is an impossible situation, unprecedented, blah, 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 the whole thing. Right, Eric? How many of those did you get?
I think I got a couple of DMs and a couple of texts, a few emails, and I don't think any of them were necessarily negative. But I think that the only ones I got were either asking for clarification or they were positive, as positive as they could be, essentially.
Right. Yeah. No, but what I guess my point is that, look, everyone is upset and rightfully so. We're all upset. We're more upset than everyone else because we want this game to be played. We want the season to end. This is week 17. This is championship. Millions of dollars are on the line. So of course we're more upset than anyone. But now we're like, look, we're following our rules. We're following our terms and conditions. We were prepared for this. 3 years ago, we wrote this into our terms and conditions. Okay? We put this in. The rest of the industry, and by the way, again, I did this yesterday and I'll do this today. Kudos to RT Sports. RT Sports was the only one that I'm aware of that had the same similar type terms and conditions written into their or similar language written into their terms and conditions that allowed them to make a ruling similar to ours. Now, what they did differently is they didn't count the stats. Fine, no problem. But they said right away, we are not counting this game because it's not being played in week 17. The NFL said that. The other guys, again, not throwing them under the bus, but they didn't know what to do. That's why they waited. They waited for the NFL to make a decision because they had no guidance. You look at the conditions of some of the other guys, guess what? There is zero mention of canceled games. There is zero mention of what to do if a game is not played on the week that it's supposed to be played. Zero. Okay? Now, maybe they meant to do that. Maybe they intended to not have that language. You know what? I spent time and thought, and I put the thought process into 3 years ago into putting this language in, and it stayed because it deserves to be stayed because it was important. And guess what? 3 years later, this crazy situation came up, and now we had something to lean on, and we knew what to do.
I want to bring this up from the YouTube chat right now. I'll put it on the screen here. Aaron Waldo's watching tonight. He wants to know what the FFPC would have done had the NFL not made the call to cancel until next week. And again, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth here, but to me, if they don't make the call to cancel till next week, it's kind of null and void because the rules that the FFPC has state that in order for a game to count for that week, it's got to be played that week, right?
That's the main part of the language. It's all right there. The game has to be played with it. Now, look, I'll be very honest with you. Okay, I'll be very honest. Had the NFL left the window open for week 18 for this game to be pushed into week 18, right? Meaning, okay, we're going to push like the week 18 games, to week 19, and we're going to play this game in week 18. Had they made that suggestion, that would have made us think. Maybe we could have then looked at our terms and said, look, maybe there's a way that we could use the God clause. The God clause meaning that, we could do something different than the NFL, than the terms currently say because of a very specific set of circumstances. But they didn't do that. The NFL said specifically, week 18 schedule is not changing. What does that mean? That means this game is not getting played in the next 7 to 10 days. Period. That's it. End of story. There was nothing to wait for from the NFL unless you wanted to count this game, unless you wanted to, as an operator, you wanted to count this game had it been played in week 19. And if you didn't have your terms and conditions laid out guiding you as far as whether you were going to use that the game from week 19 to determine your week 17 scores, like other operators didn't have, and we did. If you didn't have that language, then you were waiting to see.
I want to bring in a guy who obviously has more of a stake in this than I do, since as an employee of the FFPC, I don't play the FFPC. But a guy who does is our next guest tonight. I want to bring him in. He's the co-host of the GOAT District podcast, the 2022 Pros vs. Joe's champion, and he's a winner of many high-stakes auction, dynasty, best ball, main event, football guys leagues. He's a hard way participant and a non-loser who is generally unable to say no to any expert leagues, and I think he might have a plea about 2023 best balls with the FFPC. You follow him at Overhyped Sleeper on Twitter. No final E in Sleeper. It is Dan Williamson. Dan, welcome into the program tonight. Thanks for joining us, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, Balky. Alex, thanks for coming on and joining us. This was great to be able to hear a little bit straight from you.
So after you've heard this, Dan, from Alex, do you have any further questions or more clarification?
Hit me, man. Hit me. Let's go. Right. I'm ready.
Let's go.
Right here.
Let's go.
Right here.
Now, I mean, by and large, I think most of it was handled pretty well. I think probably the main thing, the from the people I talked to, the main issue that I was hearing about was just the fact that it sounded like the stats were gonna kind of play as they lie. As far as the first 10 minutes of the game or whatever it was. And, when in your, the first email that went out, you said, well, if there are any minor stat corrections, which kind of made it sound like, well, if they decide that Stephon Diggs had 1 yard less on a catch or something like that, those kind of things would happen. It didn't sound real open to the fact that these stats would be completely canceled. And I know, you got to go by the NFL stats, so I get that. But, I guess hindsight being 2020 probably would have been a good place to remind people of that and say, hey, if the NFL zeroes out the stats, we got to zero out the stats too.
Very good point. Very good point. In hindsight, would that have been good language to include? Maybe. Here's why I say maybe. Because anytime you make an announcement and you put in hypothetical, statements into that announcement, you're now opening up a new can of worms altogether. Mm-hmm. If this happens, we will do this. Or if that happens, we will do that. And anytime you start to add language into those announcements, any kind of making some sort of a commitment to something, then God forbid if, some unpredictable set of events take place, then people start, say, well, you said this and you said that. And by the way, Eric, sitting right next to me, he's sitting right there. Where is he? There he is. Eric knows, right? Eric, tell the story about what? Tell the story. If the game's not going to be played on Tuesday, right? We're not going to count it.
I would say, as far as, and I was texting with actually Austin Martin the other night about this, and I told him this was not a process as far as the way we craft emails for situations like this, and thank God they don't happen all the time. But based on the language that I put into the FFPC email in the COVID year about that game being included, or whether or not that Pittsburgh-Baltimore, right? Pittsburgh-Baltimore. Whether that game was
Baltimore, Tennessee. It was either
Tennessee, I think it was, yeah.
Okay, there you go. So because the language was nebulous in that, we have gone to painstaking efforts to the point where I think we all get annoyed with each other. We're picking over the different words in each email. And it wasn't a willy-nilly thing with this email being sent out. Several of us went over. I mean, our whole team really went over that email, not once, not twice, but several times. And I felt like the language in there, and we put it in there. And this is, maybe where I took it for granted a little bit, and I referenced this earlier in the show. Stats accrued on Monday night will count as they are currently official and have not been deleted by the NFL. To me, when you put that in there, I take, I give our players a lot of credit for, one, knowing that we follow the official NFL stats, right? We don't follow anybody else's. And then
which is illegal, by the way, to not follow NFL stats is illegal according to the language of the gaming commissions which govern fantasy football. Right. So anyone out there, and I'm not going to name those names, but anyone out there who's counting the stats as right now, I'm not talking about early in the week. I'm talking about as of right now. Anyone counting those stats is technically committing an illegal act for the purposes of being a fantasy sports operator, because they're gone.
Right. And getting back to the email language, I will say that sometimes because I obviously work for the company, I take for granted that all of our players know all our rules and maybe don't know them as well as I do. I take that for granted a lot of times. So I think in at least the one thing I've learned from this is to not only put the language in there, but make it totally obvious of what we're saying here. Hey, we're including the stats because the NFL is. But if the NFL chooses that they're going to wipe it, well, then we can't just include stats for something the NFL never happened. And I think that's the point. If I had to do it over again, I'd want to drive that point home more clearly. So, and I a lot of people understood it, but obviously in talking with at least one person who did not take it that way, and I know other people didn't take it that way either. So I think that's something that in that second statement, I think that's what a lot of the confusion came from.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of an important point too, because I mean, that can happen in any company really, where you get wrapped up in trying to piece together a very convoluted situation, and you're talking about language of how you're going to explain it to other people, and you all know exactly what you mean, but at the same time, it's like when it goes out to other people who haven't been involved in that whole series of discussions, sometimes it can take on a different meaning. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah. And, well, don't forget, we're writing this stuff, right? We're not sending it to have legal teams writing this stuff. Right. We're writing this stuff. Why? Because we want to connect to our customers. We want to let our customers know what we're doing, but also, try to kind of be, as careful as we can with what we're saying.
You guys are very accessible, and that's an important thing. I guess my one thought on that is, maybe when when you're in a really tricky situation like that, if it happens again, God forbid that it ever does. I mean, my God, what a horrible situation. Nobody could ever predicted that. The whole COVID thing, that was totally out of left field. When you're trying to run a business, and dealing with these things that are just, total blindside shots, it's difficult. I was in the restaurant business for 40 years, general manager of a restaurant, and when COVID came along, I kept getting, jerked around by the government, jerked around by the health department, jerked around by everybody. It's like every 5 minutes they'd change the rules on me. So, I kind of get where you're coming from. But, I think maybe in a situation like that where you're going to put out a big statement that everybody's going to read, maybe throw it by a few guys, and maybe not the same guys every time. You don't want to have like an informal kitchen cabinet because that looks bad. But, just pick 5 or 10 players kind of at random or whatever.
Board of this is where I'm getting. So we're gonna have a statement board of directors. Dan, you're going to be the head of that board.
Welcome aboard, Dan.
Thank you. You're not going to be on that board at all.
I don't want him. Not qualified to be on that board. I'm not qualified to be on that board. Don't cheapen the board by putting me on it. No, we want to improve it, and having a guy like Dan on it would be primo.
But here, listen. Can I just say something? So here's the thing, though, Dan, and this is, I really appreciate what you're saying, and you're the kind of guy, right? That you're the kind of guy that we as FFPC, like, we're used to guys like you. We've been around for 15 years,
right?
And our customers have always cared about us, have always cared about the game, the platform, and they want us to succeed. They want us to do well. They want us to make the right calls. They want us to, to do the right thing. And I feel that from you. Like, I spoke to you. I don't know you very well, but I see you in Vegas all the time. We shake hands and we talk a little bit, right?
Yep.
But this is what the majority of the FFPC is made up of, is guys who really want us to do the right thing. And I really appreciate that. And what hurts me, right? What hurts me is that sometimes we have guys that have been playing with us for years and years and years. And we take care of these guys the best we can. Anytime there's a question, anytime there's an issue, or maybe a favor that needs to be done within the realm of what we can and cannot do, we take care of everyone, right? We take care of everyone. We never say no unless we absolutely have to everyone. We're super accessible, the whole thing, right? But then when the shit hits the fan, right? When the shit hits the fan, what do these guys, not these guys, what do some people do? They take out the bombs and they start throwing the bombs. They email us for the last 10 years. They know our email. They know my email. They know Balky's phone, DM. They know Eric's, Chris, everyone, right? But instead of sending us an email and saying, hey, you know what, guy, I really disagree with you here. Here's why, maybe blah, blah, blah. So instead, here's the bomb and whoo, there we go. Boom. That's not cool.
Right.
That's not cool. And anyone listening to the show who does that, you know who I'm talking to, and that's not cool. So there's a few of those people, and we'll continue. By the way, the next time you email, the next time you ask us for a favor, we're gonna do it, and we'll always treat you, with respect. And all I ask is maybe next time the shit hits the fan, treat us a little bit with respect as well.
And hopefully there is no next time. I mean, that's the plan. But like Roger Goodell always says, hope is not a plan, right? That's why you got to have a plan. That's why you got to have stuff in place for this. Dan, listen, I appreciate you coming on and asking Alex these follow-up questions to this. And while we still have Alex, I feel like I owe it to you if you have any pleas or anything that you would like to ask Alex regarding 2023, the floor is yours, my friend.
All right. So Alex, I mean, we got best ball season coming up here. How fast can we get things turned around after you get these playoff challenge weeks going? Can we be looking at like the Monday morning after the second playoff challenge goes off?
Yeah, I think even Sunday morning. I think that's the date that we have on the calendar. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't happen. But obviously, so we kind of need to go in this order of importance, and obviously the playoff challenge is coming up. That's what we need to focus on. Then we have playoff challenge 2, and then we'll right away switch, hopefully, and we'll have the never too early best ball tourney back. Nice. We'll have the $5 best balls and the $35 best balls. We're not going to have a big selection because I don't think at this time there's not too many crazies like you, Dan. I mean, there's probably a few dozen.
Yeah, we all know who each other is pretty well.
That's right. Yeah, you'll all be playing against each other.
February. Exactly. It's like, you 10 guys and one other guy I don't know.
Right.
That's right.
How it usually goes.
Exactly. Yep. Well, listen, that's our job. Our job is to bring new players into the mix. I think we've been doing a good job of that. Yeah. But that's the answer. The answer is I'm hoping that Sunday after playoff challenge, which is I think the 22nd, I want to say of January.
22nd.
Yep. Sounds good. And Alex, I appreciate what you guys have done with handling all these curveballs and everything that have come up. I mean, it's like I said before, it's not an easy situation. Nobody has a game plan or a blueprint. You're making it up on the fly. It's a tough deal. And if you're a player, I get it. This was the worst of all possible beats. If you had a bunch of Buffalo or Cincinnati players, that was the worst of all possible beats. I mean, basically,
the worst.
Yeah, it's like for some of us who had Kyler Murray and he goes out 3 plays into a game. That's a tough beat, especially in week 13 or whatever it was.
Of course,
and then that's Taylor, goes out the next week.
Thing, Dan. Yeah, that's the thing, Dan. Like, with all of this stuff happening and everything kind of, I have to tell this whole story and several times and everything, it gets lost a little bit in the translation how awful the story is. And, obviously, the kid almost dying on the field. I mean, it's awful, right? So it all starts from there. The kid dying is awful. And then, people who are supposed to win and battle for gigantic life-changing money get screwed. right? By the not by the NFL, by the situation. I certainly don't want to throw an NFL under the bus because they're in a possible situation as well. You think we're in a possible situation? They're in a possible situation, right? So that's the thing that gets lost in all of this. Everyone's like throwing shit bombs at each other, but the truth is, it's an impossible situation. There is no solution where everyone, not even everyone, where more than half of the people are happy. There's no solution. Either this half is happy or this half is happy. That's it.
Yeah, and you're lucky if you even have half that are happy because there's usually two or three chasers after one guy who's in the lead or whatever, Right. And so it's a tough deal. But basically, just my point is this: it was an injury that cost you those players. If you lost players, and I lost players in that game. I lost leagues from it. I won some leagues from it. And I lost some leagues from it. I was on both sides of the fence, but I just had to look at it. Number one, it's it was an injury that cost me those players. It was not an injury to my players, but it was an injury that made it so those players could not go on and play, and that's something I don't have any control over. That's the same as, Kyler Murray, Jonathan Taylor, whatever. So it's just, it's a tough situation. It sucks, but it's like any other injury. You just have to suck it up, rub some dirt on it, and move on.
You can always reach Alex at myffpc.com, Alex_FFPC. Alex, enjoy Vermont. Thanks for carving out some time on your Friday night to come on and explain the situation to all our viewers, all our listeners. We really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, and this is it. I'm not doing this again. Ever.
You don't want to come. You don't want to come on the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown on Tuesday, and we'll do this all over again. No, okay, all right, we'll skip that.
I'll think about the Super Bowl when I put my prognosticator.
Cap on. You have to come back for that show for sure. We won't talk about any of this, but we'll come back and we'll talk Super Bowl props.
All right, guys. All right.
Alex Kaganowski, thank you so much, sir. Have a great Friday evening. At Alex_FFPC, and of course, Alex at myffpc.com is where to reach him. I always say this to everybody too. If you have an issue with the way things are handled, the best way to get a well thought out response is not Twitter, it's not Facebook. Send an email. And I don't know of any emails that we don't get back to somebody on who's wondering something about it. For clarification, email still always works the best for the FFPC. Okay, let's bring in my co-host with the most. You follow him on Twitter at jfarrellelliott, KFFSC.com. Farrell Elliott, welcome aboard, my friend.
Hey, fellas, what a wonderful podcast. Dan, I think we both appreciated the well thought out and well presented from the FFPC notice that we got, whether we agreed with it or not. And I must say, I certainly agreed with it. When I read through it, it was so well presented. I sent out a 29-word announcement for the KFFSC, which in that announcement I said, and Monday night stats will count. So I used 29 words and 14 of them were wrong. It's just a very, very damn difficult thing to do. And another difficult thing to do is drafting early. Congratulations on your pros versus Joe's dominance and things that you do as a player. You, myself, and the San Francisco 49ers have something in common in this strange year of professional football. Our Mr. Irrelevant was certainly a relevant player. One Isaiah Pachinko, drafted by you, I think,
20th
the
round.
very last pick, drafted by me in a 7th round of a dynasty draft. And then the 49ers, he wasn't available to them, so they had to live with a quarterback. Name, what's that guy's name?
Brock Purdy.
Mr. Irrelevant. I guess in 3 or 4 years I'll learn his name. Brock Purdy. When we look at Pachinko, we got a very, very early taste of him, and then he was set down for a while. He might have been banged up a little. I can't remember back that early. And then by the time we got to the end of October, it was fascinating. And before the end of October, they never threw him the ball, and you were tending to think, well, maybe he's not a big pass catcher. Maybe he doesn't have the perfect hands. Then if you look at his stats to finish up the rest of the season, we're looking at a player that everything they threw him, he caught. Your thoughts about this player as we approach drafts forthcoming, and obviously he was a tremendous help for you down the road. What drew you to this player? Share some of your expertise with us. Maybe we can use that same type of skill set to find a 2023 draftee.
Yeah, for me, it was, part of the way that I like to do things is I'm doing best ball, I'm doing dynasty, and I'm doing, redraft season long. So, the combination of those three disciplines kind of forces you to look at the game through different angles. And, the dynasty angle is what turned me on to Pacheco. I was aware of him. His draft season started unfolding in March and April, and certainly and especially in May after he got drafted. And so I already kind of knew what he was about. I was putting him on some dynasty teams, as you did, Farrell. And then so when it came down to we were starting to draft, still there were a lot of players drafting redraft who weren't really tuned into him yet, and they were looking at him, oh, he's a 7th round pick or whatever. Ronald Jones is there. We've got Clyde Edwards-Helaire. We've got Jerick McKinnon. All these guys there. And they're looking at it and they're saying, how is this guy ever going to earn touches? And I'm looking at it and I'm saying, this is a very fertile soil here in Kansas City, and there's nobody established. So why wouldn't I take a chance on him?
I agree with that. And I've got to ask you something about the Kansas City Chiefs overall. With all this talent in the backfield, in the receivers, at the quarterback position, the tight end, an offensive line that's relatively intact, why is it that they just barely beat everyone? Are they getting everyone's best game? Is that why it is? All they do is outlast, by 3 to 6 points and win that game. And I'm curious about it, that they're going to get in the playoffs and get in some close games with some teams that they just can't seem to recapture like they have these regular season games. You got an opinion on that?
Well, their real bugaboo seems to be the Bengals. They just cannot get past the Bengals, of course. But otherwise, I look at this season as being kind of a step forward, because last year Mahomes was really struggling. Tyreek Hill was struggling. Even, Kelsey was still Kelsey, but, the whole offense was just way off. And then they go and trade Tyreek Hill, and I'm wondering, how in the heck is this offense going to really get better? But sure enough, they did. Andy Reid got in there and he started diagramming some plays, and all of a sudden, Mahomes is hitting them, and the offense is off and running. And they are in a lot of close games. Not as many close games as my Vikings, but they're in quite a few close games. But a lot of it is more high scoring games too. So they're getting the points out there. All you need to do is take a look at their field goal kicker. He always has more extra point opportunities than he does field goal attempts.
This is true.
Yeah. So, it's kind of like, well, we expect to see the, what was it, the 1998 Vikings, the 2001 Rams, was it? 2000 Rams. You're not going to get an offense like that every year out of a team.
Dan, one of the questions I always like to ask people at the end of the year, and you can extrapolate this to your dynasty rookie drafts, or just talk about redraft, like main event football guys, best ball, what have you. Was there any players that you really liked in the drafting process and you got on a lot of teams and they performed well? Or, other side of the coin, was there anybody else that you stayed away from, like poison, and they fell flat on their faces that you're proud of this year, that you didn't have any shares of them or very few shares of them? Are there any players like that for you this year?
Yes, I think we should talk about all the players that I got right.
Yeah,
we don't need to talk about the players I got wrong. There's plenty of those. Now, I do track this stuff very carefully, so I can tell you exactly, what my exposures are on all these players. And I just took a look at this from just my redraft portfolio. Jerick McKinnon, I had over 36% exposure to. And that was somebody that I was pounding for the exact same reasons I was pounding on Pacheco. I would try to get one or the other in almost every draft if I could. Evan Ingram, I had 28% on Evan Ingram because, here is a tight end that's a good pass catcher. Yes, he drops some passes, but you got to have the ball thrown to you to drop those passes.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going to Trevor Lawrence, who likes throwing to a tight end, and he's going into Doug Peterson offense, who loves designing throws to the tight end. So you look at those things. What's not to like?
Yeah, I love these Evan Ingram guys that keep coming on here, Balky, the noted Dan Williamson. Evan Ingram. These are like guys that get religion in the last 10 minutes of church. Right? I just, but okay, fair enough. We're lucky that football pants don't have pockets, because that's where Ingram's hands would be when the ball goes zipping past him. Pros versus Joes, Dad. You got to give us more guys, because you drafted 40% rookies. Your whole roster was rookies, and I don't know why I just didn't write down their names and draft them as soon as I can. The one rookie, and I love talking about it. I never get you talk about players you were wrong about. I bring him up every week. I'll quit soon, but since you're here, the magnificent rookie master that you are, I'll tell you that the rookie that I was high on, and a lot of other people were high on too, because they had to draft him in the 12th round, is Jalen Tolbert, who's driving around Dallas looking for the stadium. He has yet to get there. You're rookies, Dan.
Yeah.
Those guys, those 40% rookies from that team. Very impressive.
Well,
And Tolbert was one of them, I think. I think Tolbert was on your Pros versus Joes team.
He was, yes. And the first thing I'm going to say is that was too many rookies. It still worked out, but that was too many rookies. It just kind of happened that, as we started getting into those later rounds, especially the last 5 rounds, we would have targets all lined up, and they would kind of disappear. And then, there was always this rookie that was our kind of emergency stopgap, and we ended up having to use that a lot of times. Now, we were pretty intentional about taking out Pierce, Greg Dulcich, and Isaiah Pacheco. We felt real good about those 3. Dulcich definitely panned out for a little while, as did Pacheco. Pierce, he had a few moments in the sun, not quite like I hoped, but
Shows promise.
Yeah, for sure. And also this, just to be clear, this was not a team that was solely drafted by myself. We had the whole GOAT District team was participating on it. So we were throwing around a lot of wild ideas, and if you look at the draft board, you can see one of our wild ideas was that since we already had Austin Eckler, we decided we'd take Justin Herbert before Patrick Mahomes was drafted. And somehow we still won.
Yeah. I always, because so it was you, Theo, Andrew, and JD all it was so. Oh my God, I struggle with one co-owner. You guys somehow got this done with four chiefs of the tribe drafting this team, and it ends up winning the whole thing, the whole shebang, and it's incredible stuff. And I shouldn't even be laughing about it, because I'm actually in awe that it worked out that way. Dan, 16 days away. You heard it from Alex Kaganowski. 16 days away from FFPC Best Ball Madness. 2023 is going to be an interesting year for the Denver Broncos offense. When you go into your first best ball of the season, are you expecting to see these Broncos coming at a discount? And if they are there players like Sutton, Judy, Williams, whoever? Are there players that you think you want to be in business with?
Yeah, I think they're definitely going to come at a discount. I mean, who knows if it will actually be a discount that pays off until we get through the 2023 season. I think that's one of the great questions of the offseason is going to be, can Russell Wilson put it back together with a better offense somehow? And I like Jerry Jeudy. I think he is probably, out of the receivers, Jeudy and Dulcich are the ones I'm the most interested in. I'm probably not going to touch Javonte Williams just because I feel like his knee injury was way too serious. I'm always a little bit leery taking players coming off injury. I'd rather, if they're going to beat me, they're going to beat me. But it's rare that a player that has a serious injury like that is going to beat me the next year. I look at him like Saquon Barkley, the first year after he came off of his severe knee injury, and he tore his ACL and 2 other ligaments, and that's exactly what Javonte Williams has done too. And the year after he came back, I mean, Saquon, he was trying hard, but he was garbage on the field. And, I had 0% of Saquon that year. This year, I was in on Saquon with both hands because now he's 2 years removed. Now he has some more better things going on around him in the offense. He's got a better offensive coordinator, all that kind of stuff. So, for those reasons, I think I'm going to be staying away from Javonte Williams. But yeah, Judy and Dulcich, I think I can be talked into.
Vic Defer from The Athletic, he has a crystal ball, and he's trying to talk us into the fact that Zamir White is your Raider to have a big role this weekend versus Kansas City. What do you try to accomplish in watching Week 18 games? We're already preparing for next year and what's forthcoming quickly in drafts that the FFPC will be offering. How do you use the time now in between when you start drafting, and what do you think about Raiders Chiefs tomorrow? It is tomorrow or Sunday, Balky?
Tomorrow,
Yeah,
Saturday. Yep,
Yep.
Saturday game.
Yeah, so Zamir White, what I'm going to be looking for specifically with him is what kind of situations are they using him in? Are they using him in the running game? Are they using him in the passing game? Is he blocking, or is he just running out for pass patterns when he's in the passing game? What kind of runs are they trying to use him for? Mm-hmm. All that kind of stuff, just to kind of get a sense for where they feel like he's at in his development, because we've really seen very little of him so far this year, and that's concerning. If Josh Jacobs, has been a great workhorse, but you kind of have to ask yourself, why weren't they spelling him at least a little bit, compared to some of those other backs? So I think Zamir's got something to prove, and I think that's one of the fun things about Week 18 is we see a lot of teams starting to throw out guys like that and just kind of see what they have. Sam Howell in Washington, that's another guy I've really had my eye on. I think he's probably a lot better than the average fifth-round quarterback, but, maybe we'll find out a little bit on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Dan, for anybody who is, maybe 2022 ended, kind of with a sour note for a lot of people out there. And maybe there's a lot of people that want to get back in. Like, I want to start drafting for 2023 or whatever right away. I've never done January best balls or February best balls or whatever. You've done this for years. What's some advice that you would give somebody who's never done it before to make sure that they're drafting competitive teams or that teams that are going to be competitive in December this year?
Well, first off, just keep in mind that every year is different. What we saw this year is not going to absolutely repeat next year, but sometimes you can look for certain patterns. Like, the elite quarterbacks. There's a group of 4 quarterbacks that just absolutely did fantastic this year. You're looking at Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes, Jalen Hurts. Is really being kind of your top 3. Justin Fields was kind of up there, but you're looking for that kind of a quarterback, and taking a quarterback a little bit earlier probably isn't the worst thing in the world, because if they're going in the 3rd, 4th round, some of the receivers that you're starting to look at there, and some of the running backs you're starting to look at there are going to be swings and misses, but quarterbacks of that caliber are not going to be a swing and a miss. So that's something to keep in mind. And if you get that one good quarterback, you can also kind of wait and take some chances on, 2 or 3 quarterbacks very late in the draft, instead of having to get that, good quality backup where you might really want to take, another running back or wide receiver or whatever.
If I remember correctly, I think too, the main event champs in the FFPC and the Football Guys Players Championship, I think both of them had Patrick Mahomes as their quarterback this year. So
right,
drive
exactly.
That point home.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing is be looking for those players who have histories of being able, wide receiver, running back, tight end, who can score 300 points. If they've got that in their history, and it seems like they might be able to do it again, you want to try to have those players on your team. Now they're going to mostly go in the first couple 3 rounds, but every now and then you'll find one that's on sale that everybody is discounting, and they're saying, you know what, I'm going to let him go in the the 5th round or 6th round. Like this past year, it was Michael Thomas. He was available in the 6th round. Yeah, I definitely took some chances on him. Didn't pan out, but if you get a 300-point scorer, or somebody who has that capability that late in a draft, it's definitely worth getting. And then the other thing, kind of that I would say, go heavier on wide receiver early in the draft. Because with wide receivers, it tends to be more talent that, kind of keeps them in the game and so forth. Whereas with running backs, it's opportunity, and opportunity is more often affected by injury. It's more often, affected by a lot of different things, like just whether the whole offense is performing well, where they get goal line chances, whether, and they're helping sustain drives. So I tend to go a little bit lighter on running backs early in the season and kind of grab more of the mid-tier backs and grab several of those and just make sure I'm concentrating on having a good wide receiver core, a good tight end, a good quarterback, and then just kind of go from there.
That is good advice as well. And Farrell, I am fresh out of emails here for Dan, but I believe you have another question that you always like to ask.
Ooh, Dan, I guess I got to change it, Balky, since we're.
I modified it a little bit for you.
You've already given me some hints. It's a deal because I never pay any attention to the stuff you send me, Balky. I got to tell you, I really don't. I really.
And the show is great that way. I think you need to keep doing it that way, because that's what makes this magical.
According to Gmail, I have over 15,000 unopened emails. It's amazing. But look, okay. But that question,
you guys need to incorporate that. One of Farrell's random facts in every show.
We'll get it sponsored. Sponsored.
Random facts with Farrell. I like
yes,
that.
I like it.
There's got to be some Kentucky bourbon that we can have to sponsor that segment of the show.
And featuring receivers, Dan, you're made for Kentucky.
That's true. Yeah. It's true.
Sharing your wisdom with players that play in Kentucky and the FFPC, there's much crossover there. Every year is a new year. But who is someone that left you with such a stench of disappointment that you cannot stand him on your roster? And who is someone that you must have in 2023? All
right. Stench of disappointment. There were a few. Rashad Bateman was one of them. I had such high hopes for him.
I got rid of him last year. Thank you. I feel good.
Darnell Mooney was another one.
Me too.
I thought was going to be real big, but that didn't pan out. Those are guys who are going to be a little bit difficult for me to roster. But I'll tell you, I think we're looking at some good guys coming up, some second-year wide receivers that are going to be really, really good. And, now that they have a year under their belt and hopefully a better quarterback situation in some cases. Chris Olave, I mean, you give that guy a quarterback, man, oh man, that guy could absolutely smash. Yep. We saw what Garrett Wilson did with the quarterback situation in New York. The Jets were, trotting up. They have not one answer at quarterback. When Mike White is the closest thing you have to an answer, that's not an answer. And yet Garrett Wilson still looked great. So I think he's a guy that, again, if they can get a decent quarterback in there, that's going to be fantastic for him. And another guy that really kept just almost popping, but not quite, Treylon Burks. Love that guy too.
Yeah. Treylon Burks kind of reminds me of your Bateman pick. I mean, God, he looks good doing it, but he plays in an offense that if he can get 65 catches a year, that's quite a celebration for the Tennessee offense, for that receiver. Balky asked me who I thought was the best rookie receiver back in the summer, and I came with Chris Olave as the ready player to step on the field, and I really loved that. Garrett Wilson had a great year, but not against Seattle and not in Week 17 much, But yeah, I really love those guys. Balky, you're in agreement here with the GOAT?
Yeah, obviously I have to be, right? No, but I would say I was never a big Burks guy. And I said this from the get-go, like even when he said he was leaving early from Arkansas, I was kind of like, I don't necessarily, I think this is me a guy I avoid in drafts. And I think I got him in like 2 best balls and that was it. But based on what I've seen this year, I'm willing to, admit when I'm wrong. And I think I might have been wrong on Burks because he showed stuff on the field that I didn't expect him to show his rookie year. And
what are you going to have to pay for Burks in a pick? What round are you going to have to draft him?
I think he's probably going to go around the 7th round.
Ooh.
Just as a rough guess.
Yeah.
He might go a little bit cheaper to start with, but I think he's one of those guys who might get steamed up relatively quickly, just because he's one of the only answers in that passing game.
Okay.
All right. So Dan, forgive me if you get this question a lot here. I just went to twitter.com/overhypedsleeper with the E. The account doesn't exist. Now I look at yours and I try to explain people how to follow you, and it's overhyped sleeper. But I say you take the final E out of sleeper, and that's Dan Williamson on Twitter. What is the impetus behind taking out that final E? Does it mean something? Is it significant of something? Because you could have the other one if you wanted, it looks like.
Well, now, perhaps something has changed, but way back when I made that Twitter handle, that was all the characters I could fit.
Oh, okay.
I was limited by characters, so I'm like, okay, I got to drop one character here. Which one's it not going to be? So that was the one.
It was the license plate conundrum, right? You
Yes,
got to drop some vowels, and you drop the one vowel. Okay. Well, our viewers can find you there on Twitter at Overhyped Sleeper, no final E in Sleeper. And then, do you guys have with the Goat District podcast? Do you guys have a set schedule? Because it seemed like this summer, like especially when we were cranking up for draft season, you had a zillion guests, and it seemed like you guys were going live every single night with another heavy hitter in high stakes fantasy football. Like I couldn't even keep track of it. There was so much good content on the show. Do you guys have a set schedule that you go with?
No, not really. Though in the off season, we'll probably start working towards that again a little bit, at least during the slower time of the off season. But yeah, you're right. When we get into draft season, we are going hot and heavy because we want to bring a lot of goodness to our listeners. We do have the ability to get some great guests, and we're as interested in talking to them as our listeners are in hearing them. We want to know what they have to say. We feel like hey, if it's interesting to us, it's probably going to be interesting to our guests as well. And then of course during draft season, we're also doing a lot of live drafts, so you got all that going on as well. So, my wife is a little bit less happy with me in the months of August and the first week of September. I have to reintroduce myself to her about September 15th or so.
Right.
But fortunately, she's left the door unlocked and hasn't changed the locks on me. So
and sorry, go ahead.
So that's been a good thing. But we do have actually a bunch of guests coming up this week. If you don't mind, I'll let you know who it is.
Please, yes, share with us.
Okay, so Monday night we're going to have Mike Shope, who is he's in Buffalo. He's the the voice of Buffalo Bills. He's going to be previewing the NFL playoffs with us. Then on Wednesday at 9:00, we're going to have Matt Hicks on, and he's a guy that we respect a lot as far as a rookie analyst. He runs a site called the Rookie Big Board. He's going to give us some early rookie ranks, and he's just fantastic at watching tape. And tape, I don't get it. I can't. I'm not one of those guys who can sit there and watch tape and break things down. I need guys like Matt Hicks working for me, So I let him do all the hard work, and then I just pick his brain. But he put me on. Last year he put me on Chris Olave. He was really big on him. He said that's my number one wide receiver right there. And I said, okay, noted.
It's true because he plays at Ohio State, and they're never on television. So you're obviously you can't see it. Can't see a guy like that. You got to have a guy. Come on.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and then Thursday we've got John Daigle from 444 Sports on. He's going to be working through the playoff challenge with us. So if you're doing the playoff challenge, you probably want to tune into that. John Daigle is fantastic at it. We put together some teams last year. We're going to put together some teams this year just to kind of show you the team building process and how you should go about it. And then not next week, but the week after, Wednesday, January 18th, we'll have John Laub on. He's another rookie expert, also works with the Rookie Big Board. He's turned us on to some fantastic players over the years, too. So, if you're into Dynasty or if you're doing early best ball and you just want to know, hey, who are those guys I should be drafting in the late rounds of a, 20 round swim or a 28 round full best ball, these guys will give you some rookies that are definitely worth pulling out. Because they every year I get some guys, like in the 23rd, 24th, 25th round, and they end up being strong contributors for my team. And I pull them out from, just those rookie players that, that I find out about from these guys.
So if you're jonesing for not only best ball knowledge, but rookie draft knowledge, Make sure you're checking out the GOAT District podcast, YouTube and Spotify, at GOAT District on Twitter, at Overhyped Sleeper on Twitter with no final E in the sleeper is Dan's account. Dan, I know I kept you a little bit longer tonight, but thank you so much for dropping some knowledge. Thanks for joining us to not only talk with myself and Farrell, but with Alex as well. We'll continue to listen to the GOAT District podcast. Keep up all the great work there. I love it. I know our plenty of our viewers love it as well. And thank you so much for doing what you do.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate you guys having me on. It was a lot of fun. We'll definitely have to do this again. I saw in the comments you and JD were talking about doing a collaboration show.
Well, what's funny is I was like, I'd never be able to do a podcast in Las Vegas with the FFPC events going out there. And then this past year, I did 11 hours of radio with Better Sports Network. So I guess I could probably squeeze a podcast in, right? Like I think I can make it happen. But yeah, that would be awesome to do that out in Vegas for sure. Enjoy the playoffs this weekend, my friend. Good luck in the playoff challenge, and good luck this upcoming season. We'll talk again soon.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, guys.
See you, Dan.
Dan Williamson, ladies and gentlemen, at Overhyped Sleeper on Twitter from the GOAT District podcast. Great stuff from him. I always learn a ton every time I watch the GOAT District podcast, or actually, I shouldn't say watch it. I listen to it more because I have other stuff going on and I can't focus totally on watching it. But that's not to say it is not awesome, because it is, with John David and Theo Greminger and Andrew Schellenberg, who's actually been on this show with us before. Farrell Goal Knowles for Andrew Schellenberg as well. And that's going to wrap up this week, my friend. I appreciate you hopping aboard tonight and hanging out with me. Good luck in all your playoff challenge quests. We will reconvene here next Friday for our big playoff challenge preview. And that's going to be a fun one, I think.
Good. I'll look forward to that, Balky. And I want to thank Alex for sharing all the information and doing such a great job and exhibiting the leadership that we need, in this business and in this industry. I love flashing this around. Year one in the FFPC.
Oh, gee.
And you know what? These people are commenting, this league's doing it this way, and these people, I don't really care, because, this is where I play, and I am so grateful for having that platform to play, and there's more offered there that I can get to. And that's all I need to do. So I'm very much comfortable in the hands and the decisions that are made there. And I'm trying to mimic some of that activity here at the KFFSC and make those same wise decisions for our membership. And
KFFSC.com is where to go to get involved in the early 2023 Kentucky drafts that will be going on not only live in Louisville coming up here in a few weeks, but also it seems like the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship starts earlier and earlier every single year, Farrell. And I love it. That's where I play. And I'm digging it. It's my favorite place to play it for sure. So look forward to that, Farrell. Enjoy the games this weekend, and we'll be back next Friday to get everybody set for the playoff challenge.
Thank you, bud.
Farrell Elliott, ladies and gentlemen, joining us here on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show. Want to thank High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, beg your pardon. I want to thank him. I want to thank Dan Williamson. I want to thank Alex Kaganowski, the FFPC, Rob Bryce, and of course, each and every one of you. We are live next Friday, 10/9 Central. We'll share our thoughts on the playoff challenge. Certainly, I will glean some stuff watching the GOAT District this week to try to pick up some tips that I could pass on to everybody on this show who is going to be playing in the world famous FFPC playoff challenge. Just a $200 entry, a $500,000 grand prize. If you want to get involved with the Football Guys Playoff Challenge, just a $35 entry, and you can win $100 grand off that as well. If you don't want to wait that long, you don't have to. You can play in the FFPC Week 18 Weekly Challenge. That's going on right now at myffpc.com. You can play with 10 players or 12 players on your team. If you want to play with kickers and defenses, you can enter for $200. You can enter for $35, and you can play with 100 other people, or 30 other people, or 10 other people. And if you win in that 10-team format, you will have a free entry into the 2023 FFPC main event, where you can play for $1 million and you can win your entry this weekend. High Stakes Lowdown for RotoViz is going to be returning live on Tuesday. FFPC main event championship round, 9th place finisher Rob Linkowski will join us on that. That is at 10/9 Central on Tuesday night right here on the FFPC YouTube channel. In case you missed this past week, Matt Berman, who was the 7th place team heading into week 17 in the FFPC main event, we chopped it up with him, got some good tips and good advice for 2023. I do want to remind everybody to subscribe, comment, share, and get notified. The more you do of that, the better the content gets, obviously. And we want to bring out the best content we possibly can for you. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Your weekend officially starts now.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com. It was broadcast live and was watched around the world. Balky and Farrell will be back next week with more analysis, more interviews, and more advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk with you again next week.
Yourself.